Last time, we examined the web of suspicion around Tomaso Chioni, the 4-hour window, the porch footage, that power of attorney, and 5 FBI visits. That video spread wide, and it left one question unanswered on purpose. If Tomaso Chioni orchestrated this, he didn't act alone. The FBI's suspect is 5'9" to 5'10". Tomaso Chioni is taller. It's not him. This was the biggest flaw in the theory. A hole I left open while I kept digging. I've now sifted through Pima County court records, property deeds, and old social media. I discovered a name that consistently appears right next to Tomaso Chioni. A name with a rap sheet. Felony burglary, robbery, theft, and embezzlement. A man living just minutes from Nancy Guthrie's home, who matches the FBI's description. This is his story. His name is Dominic Aaron Lee Evans, and his tie to this case runs deeper than anyone knows. Music. It all began with a Craigslist ad in April of 2007. Dominic Evans, a drummer, found guitarist Walter I. Gonalves Jr. through a simple online post. Tomaso Chioni, recently arrived from Italy, found them through the Tucson Weekly. The three started a band. They named it Early Black Indie Post-Punk. Their style was grunge and shoegaze music for small college-town bars that never hit the big time. Dominic played drums. Tomaso was on bass and vocals. Gonzalez handled guitar. They cut their first album in Tucson, releasing it in 2010 to warm local reviews. They gigged around Arizona and had a small following, but fame never came. The title of that album was Life, Love, Murder. And I have to pause on that. I know bands use dark titles. It's not proof of anything on its own. But given what ultimately happened to Nancy Guthrie, it feels different. Especially now that one of the musicians is under a microscope for a possible kidnapping link. That title just lands differently now than it did in 2010. You know exactly why. Beyond the title, the band represents something far more critical. A deep friendship. They were not friends from childhood or school. These were strangers who connected over music and forged a bond through years of rehearsals and shows. By January 2026, when Nancy Guthrie went missing, they had known each other for 19 years. 19 years is not a casual link. It's a profound connection where you know someone's habits, their money troubles, their deepest flaws. You know what lines they will and will not cross. You know what they need. In a case with a suspected accomplice, 19 years of trust isn't just background detail. It's a foundation. Tomaso married Annie Guthrie in September 2006, a year before the band even existed. That means, for the entire friendship with Dominic, Tomaso was part of the Guthrie family. Every single talk between them over those 19 years happened under that shadow. Dominic would have known about the family. He'd have known about Savannah. He would have known about their house in the Catalina foothills, not from surveillance, but from friendship. Over 2 decades, you simply learn these things. Let me know what you think below, because what I'm showing you now hasn't been reported anywhere else. Let's continue. Dominic Aaron Lee Evans has a criminal history in Pima County, Arizona. The convictions are for felony burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, and a DUI. This was first brought to light by the account JLR Investigates on X. They published a screenshot of the official court filings from the Arizona system. The media flagged his criminal record. But to understand this case, we have to dissect what those charges truly mean. Burglary. In Arizona, this isn't shoplifting. It's illegally entering a structure, planning to commit a serious crime inside. It's about crossing into a private space you don't belong, a home, a building, a residence. That definition is a near-perfect match for what unfolded at Nancy Guthrie's on February 1st. An intruder, there to commit robbery. And robbery isn't just theft. It's theft executed with violence, or the very threat of it. It's not a crime of stealth. It is pure confrontation. It requires the cold willingness to physically face someone and take what is theirs through force. The intruder at Nancy's house wasn't just there for objects. He was there for a person, an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker. Doing that requires crossing a dark psychological line, the will to physically overpower another human being. Most of us simply don't have that capacity, but someone convicted of robbery has already made that leap. Then come the financial crimes, theft, and embezzlement. They reveal a history of taking what isn't yours and a comfort with long-term deceit. Embezzlement especially is a profound betrayal. You can't embezzle from someone who doesn't already trust you. Now, let's build a profile of the man on Nancy Guthrie's porch that night. He enters a private home in the dead of night. He confronts an elderly woman, forcibly removing her, all while masked and in cheap gear, suggesting experience, but not sophistication. This profile is a world away from a 15-year biology teacher who studies lizards and makes his own pasta. But for a felon convicted of both burglary and robbery, it's a disturbingly precise fit. I have already introduced my theory that this crime required two people, an architect and an operative. The architect is the mind behind it all, the one who knows the house. He knows the cameras, the victim's schedule, the family's money. The operative is the muscle who carries out the plan. He is the man on the porch, the figure in the mask, the one who goes in and does the work. One supplies the intelligence, the other supplies the nerve. If Tomaso Chioni is the architect, the question becomes, who in his circle has the criminal past and the physical power, and the cold willingness to be the operative? One name answers every part of that question: Dominic Evans. And don't forget the DUI. It may seem like the smallest charge, but it reveals a crucial trait: risk tolerance. A person who drives drunk proves they are willing to endanger others for their own convenience. They show that for them, impulse is stronger than the fear of consequences. In behavioral analysis, DUI offenders are statistically predisposed to other high-risk behaviors. It's not the crime itself that matters. It's what it shows about a person's disregard for consequence. Now, let's step back and see what a criminal record means within the accomplice theory. I've asked before, if Tomaso Chioni needed someone to physically execute his plan, who would he call? Not a stranger, not some professional hitman from a movie. He would call someone he already trusts, someone who understands the stakes and has already shown a willingness to cross moral and legal boundaries. Someone who has experience being in places they are forbidden to be. Every crime is an education. Burglary teaches you to move like a ghost through a space that isn't yours, undetected. You learn the language of locks, the whispers of doors. You learn to silence noise, to control your breathing, to make your footsteps disappear in the dark. Robbery teaches you how to command a chaotic scene through sheer force or fear. These are not academic skills. They are practiced, honed abilities, and once you have them, they are burned into your muscle memory, like a beat a drummer learned 20 years ago. The FBI has outlined what the suspect on the porch did. He moved in darkness, he knew the camera layout and disabled it. He got inside, and he confronted an 84-year-old woman. He physically forced her from her own home. He left without a single neighbor noticing. He ditched evidence along his escape route, and then vanished. That is not the work of a first-timer. This looks like the work of a man who has done this before the entry. The confrontation, the taking, those actions aren't new. They're part of a legal record in Pima County, tied to one name: Dominic Aaron Lee Evans. Let's be precise about what is fact versus what is speculation. No law enforcement agency has officially named Dominic Evans. He is not a public person of interest to the FBI or the Sheriff's Department. Everything presented here is drawn from public records, open-source intelligence, and observable reality. I am not accusing him of involvement in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. I am showing you why the public is demanding answers about him. The FBI describes the figure on camera as a male, around 5'9" to 5'10", with a medium build. He has facial hair, like a mustache or goatee, visible through his mask, and was carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack. He also wore a belly band holster, positioned incorrectly over a thick jacket, for what appeared to be a handgun. A former FBI supervisory special agent, criminal profiler Jim Clemente, pointed something out to Fox News Digital. He observed what looks like a marking, perhaps a tattoo, on the suspect's right wrist in the surveillance clip. Clemente believes if it is a tattoo, it's a critical piece of evidence for both investigators and the public to identify a person of interest. As soon as the FBI released that description, online sleuths began scrutinizing Tomaso Chioni's inner circle. Dominic Evans became their central focus. Multiple social media users noted Evans's athletic build and facial hair matched the FBI's profile perfectly. The similarity between the suspect's eyes and lips and those of Dominic was called uncanny. Others combed through old music videos, uncovering what they claim is a tattoo on Evans's wrist in the same location. Now, a serious note of caution is necessary here. Matching a grainy doorbell camera still to a clear photo is fundamentally unreliable. The lighting, the angle, digital compression, and mask distortion make a definitive visual ID. From public footage alone, impossible. I will not sit here and tell you the man on that porch is Dominic Evans based on a simple photo comparison. That would be irresponsible. But this is what I can confirm. Dominic Evans is not excluded by the physical profile from the FBI. The 5'9" to 5'10" height range is consistent with his own. The medium build matches, the facial hair matches, and if that wrist marking is a tattoo, the pool of suspects shrinks dramatically. Jim Clemente is not some online speculator. He is a veteran FBI profiler who analyzed this exact type of evidence for a living. When he flags a tattoo as significant, he is signaling that the Bureau is already focused on that detail. They are likely running it against their databases. And this brings us to the one detail buried in all the chatter about faces and tattoos: the height, 5'9" to 5'10". As I detailed in a previous report, Tomaso Chioni appears to be substantially taller than that range in available photographs. Several journalists who studied photos of Tomaso with others agree that he is taller than the FBI's estimate. This was the biggest hole in the theory I presented. If Tomaso is too tall, the entire theory falls apart. Unless there wasn't just one person involved. The theory doesn't collapse if the man on the porch wasn't the one who orchestrated the entire event. And it holds perfectly if the man on the porch stands 5'10", is athletic, has a goatee, and possibly a wrist tattoo, along with a prior conviction for felony burglary. The height difference doesn't kill the Tomaso theory. It proves the accomplice theory. It proves the architect wasn't the operator. And it points right to the man who has appeared in banned photos next to Tomaso for 19 years. Public records link Dominic Evans to addresses throughout the greater Tucson and Marana areas, including past residences in Eloy. He was born on February 18, 1978, which makes him 47 years old. Southern Arizona has been his home for most of his life. Marana itself is a short drive from the Catalina foothills, where Nancy Guthrie lived. The February 13th SWAT raid that captured national headlines occurred at a home near East Orange Grove Road and North First Avenue. That location is approximately 1.9 miles from Nancy Guthrie's house. Because of his known address in the Marana area, social media immediately made a connection between that raid and Evans. First, a critical correction to the story everyone thinks they know. That SWAT raid on February 13th, it wasn't for Dominic Evans. ABC News identified them: Luke Daly, 37, and his 77-year-old mother. Their lawyer confirmed Daly has a prison record for drugs, but he insists they weren't arrested and have no ties to Nancy Guthrie. A DoorDash driver, Carlos Pelos, was also detained and cleared. So let's be clear. The SWAT team was not targeting Dominic Evans. But the geography doesn't lie. Evans lives near Tucson, Marana. Nancy was 4 miles away. These spots form a tight triangle. To plan a crime like this requires intimate knowledge of the area. Access after dark and a fast escape route from this triangle is key. Another location demands scrutiny: a property tied to Evans in Rio Rico. Rio Rico, 60 miles south of Tucson, 16 from the Mexican border. It's remote, isolated, a place where someone could simply vanish. Mexico's embassy told Fox News there's no sign of Nancy there. Their Secretary of Security, Omar Garcia Haruch, stated this publicly. But Rio Rico's border access is a glaring red flag. It fuels theories about an escape route out of Tucson with a victim. There is zero evidence Nancy was taken to Rio Rico or across. But with 50,000 tips and an 84-year-old still missing, every geographic link to the suspect's inner circle is critical. And Evans's map stretches from the crime scene to Arizona's empty spaces. Think about what it takes to make a person disappear. You can't hold someone in a suburb filled with cameras and FBI agents. You need isolation, a rural blind spot with no surveillance, a place where a car arriving at night goes unnoticed. Rio Rico fits. Vast properties, scattered houses, dirt roads hidden from Google. The desert swallows sound. The route there is Interstate 19 South. At 2 in the morning, it's a 50-minute drive through the darkness. Leave Nancy's neighborhood at 2:30 a.m., you're there by 3:20. A return trip puts you back home easily by 4 to 10 in the morning. The whole operation fits neatly into the darkness before dawn. And along that route, every cell tower is a potential witness. If the driver was careless, cell data will tell the whole story. Now, let's revisit the FBI footage for a detail everyone missed. The door. More specifically, the security gate in front of the door. This is common in Tucson, a wrought iron secondary barrier. In the footage, the suspect approaches the front door. He taps the camera, then enters. But the real question is how? How did he pass the gate? There is no sign of forced entry, no prying, no tools. He moves through it as if it were open. Two possibilities exist. First, Nancy left her gate unlocked. She was 84, living alone in that home since 1985. It's possible she forgot. The second possibility is far more sinister. Someone who had been in the house earlier left it open for him. The plan required an accomplice with inside knowledge of the gate. Chioni dropped Nancy off around 9:30 that night. But did he ensure the gate was actually locked? Or was a path left open for someone else 4 hours later? The figure on the porch moved without obstruction. He walked a path that seemed prepared for him. If the way was cleared, he just needed to be told which door. The FBI and Sheriff's Department confirmed 2 separate DNA profiles. The first came from a glove found 2 miles from Nancy's home. The FBI says this glove visually matches the one in the footage. Its DNA belongs to an unknown male, not matching Nancy. It also doesn't match family or anyone in the national database. The second DNA profile was recovered from inside the home. This sample is currently under analysis at a private Florida lab. Critically, the DNA from the glove doesn't match the DNA from the house. They are from 2 entirely different people. 2 profiles, 2 individuals, 2 locations. One on a discarded glove, one inside the home where she was taken. This is no longer just a theory about an accomplice. This is hard biological proof of 2 separate individuals at the scene. A former FBI negotiator says an accomplice changes the entire case. A kidnapper would need help to control a victim and manage the logistics. Investigators are now turning to investigative genetic genealogy. Even if the suspect isn't in a database, a family member might be. By building family trees from public data, they can pinpoint a suspect. This process is painstaking, but it has cracked cases that have been cold for decades. If they had only found one profile, the defense would be simple: a lone wolf. But 2 profiles mean 2 family trees to trace, 2 networks of relatives. The probability that neither person has a relative in a database drops exponentially. It's hard to hide from one DNA profile. 2 makes it a mathematical certainty that one will lead to a name. And if one name connects to the man who last saw her, or his drummer of 19 years, then every suspicious detail I've presented ceases to be coincidence. It becomes a conspiracy, proven by their own DNA. Let's look at the FBI footage again, because a detail now takes on new weight. The Bureau released both video and stills from the doorbell camera. Some experts, like private investigator Steve Feiser, noticed something. They've raised the possibility that the footage shows 2 different people. One image shows a figure with a backpack and holster. Another doesn't. The posture and physical build appear slightly different between them. Fox News reported this led to wide speculation of a second suspect. If this is true, the 2 DNA profiles may have visual confirmation. It wouldn't be one person making several trips. It would be at least 2 people coordinating the attack. One could have handled security, while the other entered to take Nancy. How do you abduct an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker from her own bed in the dead of night? This isn't a snatch and grab. You can't be fast. You can't be rough. She had to be carefully guided out of the house to a car parked far enough away to evade neighborhood surveillance. An operation that's slow is dangerously exposed, and during that time, you need a lookout. A second pair of eyes watching for a porch light to flicker on, for a passing car, for a dog to start barking. The person managing the victim inside cannot also be the sentinel outside. That requires two people, a conclusion Sheriff Nanos supports. Telling BBC News he believes Nancy was targeted. She wasn't a random choice. Someone specifically selected her. And when your target is an elderly woman in a quiet, poorly lit neighborhood, you don't improvise. You plan. You run drills. You disable cameras. You execute the abduction of a vulnerable person. You meticulously dispose of evidence across a 2-mile stretch. And you make the victim vanish without a trace for 3 weeks. This was not a crime of impulse. And that's where the profile of Dominic Evans becomes critical again, not for his appearance, but for his resume. A man with a history of burglary knows how to get inside a home. A man with robbery convictions knows how to control someone. A man who knows Tucson knows every back road and escape route. A man who's been friends with Tomaso Chioni for 19 years knows the victim's family. And a man whose DNA is likely already in the Arizona state database. Has every motive to wear nitrile gloves and a mask if he's committing another felony. Then on February 9th, NewsNation reported that Tomaso Chioni had dropped out of public sight for nearly a week. Correspondent Brian Anton noted on the Megyn Kelly show that Chioni was easy to recognize. With his large beard, he hadn't been seen anywhere near the family residence since early February. A man goes dark during the most intense public investigation in the state, while his mother-in-law is missing. The FBI has a command post in his neighborhood. News crews are aimed at his house, yet he makes himself a ghost. Now, there are innocent explanations. His attorney could have told him to lay low. The constant media scrutiny may have just been too much. He could be staying with relatives. These are all plausible. But now place his silence next to what is known about Dominic Evans. When two people are connected, and one is facing immense scrutiny, while the other is an afterthought, the visible one needs to vanish, not flee. Just stop being seen. Stop creating new data. Stop giving reporters fresh footage and analysts new body language to dissect. Every appearance is a gamble. Every new photo invites comparison. Every spoken word is something a lawyer may have to defend later, all while Dominic Evans has said nothing. He has given no media interviews. He has made no social media posts. He has issued no denial, nor has he expressed any public concern for Nancy Guthrie. In our era of constant connection, where a global statement is 30 seconds away, his silence is total. Silence from one person could mean anything, but silence from two men friends for 19 years, both tied to the victim's family, both subjects of public speculation. That kind of silence sounds coordinated. It sounds like two men following the same orders from the same advisor. Don't talk, don't post, don't engage. Wait for the storm to blow over, and hope your DNA isn't found. As of this recording, Nancy Guthrie has been gone for 23 days, and the search has entered a traditional detective phase. The Puma County Sheriff's Office has fielded over 55,000 calls, while the FBI has received over 21,000 tips. 400 investigators are now working the case full-time. The reward for information leading to an arrest has climbed to $200,000 thanks to an anonymous donor. A major focus is now on Walmart to identify the buyer of the suspect's Ozark Trail backpack. Sheriff Nanos has labeled this a promising lead for the investigation, confirming the backpack is a Walmart exclusive and that they are now working directly with the corporation. The hunt began with a statewide dragnet, scouring gun sales from the last 60 days. They're canvassing Tucson gun shops with photos of the distinctive holster seen in the footage. The sheriff described the holster's features as incredibly unusual. The FBI is digging into a year's worth of Tucson gun sales, circulating photos to local dealers. Meanwhile, The DNA evidence is undergoing genealogical analysis. Tech experts are trying to salvage more security footage while using a device called a signal sniffer. It's a Bluetooth tracker, flown by helicopter, hunting for the signal from NY's pacemaker. On Instagram, Savannah Guthrie pleads for her mother's return, telling the abductor it's not too late. But behind these public pleas, a different story is unfolding. The investigation is hitting a wall. Sources tell ABC News their strongest leads have gone cold. The partial DNA is a ghost, and no additional video has been recovered. And there is still no vehicle connected to the abduction. Sources say the case may soon scale back to a small, long-term task force. This is the critical window. The next few weeks will decide everything. Everything hinges on the genealogical DNA results, a process retired agent Jason Pack laid out. A private lab builds the profiles. They go to the sheriff, and the FBI runs them through CODIS. In a very short time, they will know if they have a match. If CODIS is a dead end, genealogy databases take over, hunting through family trees for a name. The backward walker footage from January 23rd gave investigators a second timeline to dissect. Another night, the suspect was active and possibly careless. With an accomplice, that theory intensifies. If two people were involved, cell tower data becomes exponentially more valuable. The FBI isn't hunting for one phone at two locations. They're hunting for two phones, two devices that were likely near each other on both of those nights. Two devices that may have taken the same route at the same time. Two devices pinging the same towers. The suspect might have rehearsed alone on January 23rd, but if there was a partner, it's likely both were there for the dry run. One person practicing the approach, the other acting as a lookout from a nearby vehicle. Timing police response, counting the seconds. A rehearsal isn't just for the lead actor. It tests the entire operation. And for the perpetrators, that's a huge problem. You can fabricate an alibi for February 1st. You plan for it, you ditch your phone, you use a different car, becoming a digital ghost. But January 23rd was never supposed to happen. No one was meant to see it. The camera should have missed him. The dog shouldn't have barked. And that footage was never supposed to go online. They thought their rehearsal was invisible, which means they almost certainly took no precautions. Their phones were on. They drove their own cars, pinging cell towers all the way. And all of that data is just sitting there, waiting. If the FBI overlays tower data from both nights, and two phones appear in both sets, phones belonging to two individuals who are connected, who live in the same area, with a 19-year history, the case doesn't just narrow, it slams shut. Meanwhile, a series of bizarre ransom notes have surfaced. TMZ got the first one on February 1st and 2nd, demanding millions in Bitcoin. It included a wallet address. Then came a second note, a third, and a fourth. The fourth email, on February 16th, claimed the sender saw something 5 days prior. South of the border, they were told to keep quiet, insisting they knew the kidnapper was Nancy. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente and ransom expert David Levon analyzed the notes. Levon pointed out the sender won't touch an initial $50,000 payment until after an arrest. The tipster claimed they were betting it all their safety for their freedom. Levon saw this as a sign. The sender was dangerously close to the fire, close to the flame. That phrase still haunts me. This wasn't the writing of a stranger demanding a payout. It read like someone on the fringes, someone who knew the truth but didn't pull the trigger. They were terrified of being implicated but saw a chance to cash in on what they knew. The tipster used a bizarre phrase, the main individual, not the kidnapper, not the suspect, but the main individual. That's corporate speak. It suggests a chain of command. It hints the sender knows multiple people were involved, with one person in charge. If a lone wolf broke in and abducted a woman, the language would be different. You'd say the abductor or the man, not the main individual. That implies you know it's a layered operation. So, who would write that? Someone near the fire. Someone who personally knows the key player. Someone risking it all because they fear being dragged down with them. Does that sound like a random tipster? Or does it sound like an accomplice on the edge of the conspiracy? Someone who was just involved enough to know the details, but not powerful enough to feel secure. Someone watching this case unfold, trying to get ahead of the inevitable DNA results. If the accomplice theory holds, then more than 2 people know what really happened to Nancy Guthrie. There could be people who handled logistics, offered a location, or were brought in after the fact. Every single one of them is watching the same news reports you are. They see the DNA labs spinning. They see the genealogy searches. They see the $200,000 reward. And we know at least one has already reached out to the press, hiding behind anonymous emails. The circle of those who know the truth is growing, and the wider it gets, the more likely it cracks. Before we explore the counter-arguments, we need to talk about something. I have to address the sloppy coverage of Dominic Evans that's spreading across social media. Some creators framed the February 13th SWAT raid as targeting Evans. That's false. The target was Luke Daly. Evans has never been publicly detained or questioned by law enforcement in this case. Calling this the Evans raid is just wrong, and it damages the credibility of this entire investigation. Some have reported latex gloves were found. They weren't latex. They were nitrile. And that detail is critical. Nitrile is standard in scientific labs. It's a direct link to Tomaso's profession. Getting basic facts like this wrong is inexcusable. Others have posted side-by-side photos of Evans and the masked figure, claiming it's a conclusive match. It absolutely is not. You cannot make a reliable ID from low-res, infrared doorbell footage of a masked face. True facial comparison is a forensic science, not a game of making collages for social media. I'm bringing up the Dominic Evans angle because the known facts demand we look at it. His criminal history, his location, his ties to Tomaso, the description, the 2 DNA profiles. These are all valid points to consider, but they are not proof. Anyone telling you this case is solved is selling you a lie. The logic goes, if the family is cleared, so is Tomaso, which means the murder-for-hire theory collapses. That's a solid counter-argument, and it has to be taken seriously. But cleared is a police term, not a court verdict. It's a status. It just means there isn't enough evidence to press charges right now. That can change. And in cases this big, clearing family members can be a strategic move. It's a tactic to ease public pressure, and maybe, just maybe, make the real culprit feel safe enough to slip up. It's also entirely possible that Dominic Evans has nothing to do with any of this. They'll say his past is old news, irrelevant to this. That his resemblance is just bad luck. That he and Tomaso are just friends. The real culprit is a ghost, a DNA profile waiting for a name. And that's a possibility we cannot just dismiss. My last video laid out the theory. Tomaso Chioni was the architect. Tonight, we've explored Dominic Evans as his operative, a man with a history of burglary and robbery. He matches the FBI's description and was friends with the victim's son-in-law for 19 years. He lives right there. His first album was titled Life, Love, Love, Murder. But I'll end with a point no one else is making out loud. The Dominic Evans theory isn't about his face. It's not about a tattoo or a social media comparison. It's because he solves the single biggest problem with the Tomaso Chioni theory. The biggest counter-argument from my last video was height. Tomaso is too tall for the porch footage. That fact should shatter the entire theory, but it doesn't, thanks to Dominic Evans. He has the right height, build, background, and proximity, and the right connection to the man who dropped Nancy off. Without Evans, the Tomaso theory fails. But with him, every flaw vanishes. It's formation. It's not proof. It's a viable framework, and investigators use frameworks to organize facts until the evidence talks. The DNA will talk. So will genealogy and cell data. And then, this theory will either hold or break. Now consider one more thing. The reward is up to $200,000. That's not just for strangers. It's for anyone on the inside who knows something. For anyone who knows what happened January 31st, that sum will test their loyalty. It will test friendships. It tests the bond of 2 men who met in 2007 and made music for nearly 2 decades. Money has a way of breaking someone's silence especially when a DNA match could bring feds to your door. I'm not telling you he did it. I'm saying when the DNA results arrive, investigators cannot afford to ignore his name. And if it connects, then the album title, the record, the 19-year friendship, the height, the location, it all stops being coincidence and becomes evidence. The DNA will be the judge. It always is. And we'll be here when it happens. Drop your theories below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what I overlooked. What do you think happened that night? This community has been ahead of the curve, and I won't stop digging through records until Nancy Guthrie is home. So subscribe, hit notifications, and share this with anyone following the case. Our next update covers the DNA results the moment they're public, and it could change everything. Nancy Guthrie is out there. She is alive until proven otherwise. And someone, somewhere, knows where.
The haunting disappearance of Nancy Guthrie and the painful fractures in the Brooks family remind us of a sobering truth. The strongest security system isn't a deadbolt or a camera. It is the unwavering vigilance we owe to those we love. Nancy, a woman of fierce independence, lived her final moments in a world of total silence after removing her hearing aids. Her story is a staggering wake-up call that home is a sanctuary only as long as we bridge the silent gaps between check-ins. We must realize that an unlocked gate or a missed dose of heart medication isn't just a lapse in routine. It's a vulnerability that predators, both digital and physical, are waiting to exploit. True protection requires more than technology, it demands presence. We must be the ambient surveillance for our elders, watching over them with the same dedication they once gave us. Let these accounts inspire a deeper commitment to communal duty. Don't let your last conversation be an accidental voice memo or a fleeting hello in the driveway. In a world where digital footprints can become blueprints for harm, our greatest armor is the strength of a family that refuses to look away. Because when the porch lights flicker and the world goes quiet, the only thing that truly stands between safety and tragedy is our choice to be each other's keepers.